So, as Chike mentioned, I come from Viacom, which Viacom consists of a number of different brands, including some of the well-known ones like MTV and Comedy Central, and some smaller ones. I'll take you through what those brands are. I'll also explain what my role is there and how mobile as a strategy has come about for us and also evolved and changed over time. And then, as Chike mentioned, I'm going to take you through a case study. But first I wanted to start with a personal story. I have a younger sister who's in college now. And she came up to me the other day, and we were having dinner, and she said, "My life is over," very dramatically. And I thought, well, something terrible must have happened. What could it possibly be? And she said, "My phone is broken." So I'll caveat that with my sister is a theater major, so she's very dramatic. But I thought it was an interesting comment, and when you think about mobile, and I feel like I don't even need to say this in this room, because the fact that you guys are all here shows me that everybody's bought in, and you're either starting to do things in mobile or you believe in it and you see potential there. But if you think about things like, if I walk out the door, there are three things I want to bring with me. That's my wallet, my keys, and my phone. Wallet and keys, if I forget them, I might not go back. Phone, I'm definitely going back. So it's an important thing. I think you guys all know that and agree with that. So let me tell you a bit about my role and our brand. So as I mentioned, Viacom includes a number of TV stations. What we're most well known for is MTV. And that's a brand that mostly caters to young adults. But we have a number of other demographics that we cater to and a number of other different brands. So this is not all of them, this is many of them. And one of our biggest challenges is building out products, and that's what my role is focused on, is building out digital products that are taking advantage of the mobile platform. So one of our biggest challenges is building out things that meet the needs of all of these different users, from kids looking at Nickelodeon content to adults looking at MTV to maybe older adults looking at Comedy Central or some of our other channels. So we are a TV company, and I know that not everybody here is involved in TV, so my case study, I hope, and I believe, is a good parallel for just about any business. Think about that as I go through. So I also want to tell you just sort of the timeline of how we became involved in mobile, why we started, and how things have changed and how market changes have affected our product strategy. So we started in mobile in about 2003, and one of our brands, MTV, helped to launch Virgin Mobile in the United States. So that was how we became focused on mobile. And in the beginning, it was focused on SMS, ringtones, and wallpapers. So we worked with Virgin Mobile to build sections of their deck within their devices that promoted MTV and Comedy Central ringtones and wallpapers, as well as text alerts, jokes of the day, things like that were powering all of these features. So this is how we first started in mobile, around 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago now. And since then, there are a number of factors that have sort of changed the mobile landscape, and I've listed three of them, but it's far and away not the only ones. The iPhone launch, the Android launch, and the release of the iPad are three, but there are so many more, like new levels of connectivity. 3G has changed what we do. So that's particularly important to video. So when we first started, and we're a video company, that's our primary content is video content. When we first started offering video, it was through carrier services. So the carriers in the US, like Verizon and AT&T, they were our distribution channel for this. So they had subscription services. This is an important business to us. That's changed over time, and it's now more of a direct-to-consumer business because of connectivity and because of devices with more powerful browsers. So now on our mobile sites, we're offering video. So that's a business that started a long time ago, but has changed and evolved over time. Applications and games, this is something we also started early on, and again, this was an area where our distribution channel was the carrier portals. And that also has changed mainly with the introduction of the iTunes App Store and now Google Play Store for Android. So this has changed, but it's a business we've been in for a long time. Mobile web, we started this in about 2007. The main reason we entered this area from a strategy perspective was we saw advertiser demand. So as a television company, a lot of our revenue is driven by advertising demand. So when we launched our first mobile sites, on day one, we had banner ads running in those, and we were monetizing those sites. And that's evolved as well over time. I mentioned tablets here because what that did was, you know, all of these new technologies are disruptive, and they make it hard to do things in mobile. The tablet was one of those. We had sort of figured out this small screen. We had, a long time ago, figured out this large screen, which is we had something in the middle. And we had to figure out what to do for those users. How do we change that experience and take advantage of it? So that has changed us. And then the last thing I'll mention is around something that we refer to as co-viewing. It's also called second screen experiences. What we know, and there's lots of data out there that say this, is that most of the time, many people, especially in our demographic areas, when they're watching television, they have their tablet in front of them or their phone in front of them. And they're texting their friends about something that's happening in the show. They're tweeting about it. They're looking at Twitter to see what other people are saying. So it's an activity that people are already doing. So this is a big focus for us now because we feel like there's a big opportunity to enhance that experience and monetize that experience and make it better for the user, but also build an additional line of business out of it. So that's where a lot of our focus is today. But I'm going to go all the way back to SMS, and I'm going to enter the case study. So I have an assignment for all of you guys while I go through this case study. I want you to, as I go through this, this is specific to our business, which is television. I want you to think about how you can apply some of the things I'll go through in your own world, whether it's retail or food services industry or insurance, whatever your business is. I do feel like this case study can be applied very broadly. So I would love to talk with you guys afterwards and hear what you're thinking, but that's your assignment for the next 20 minutes or so. All right, so I'll paint the picture here. So we had a goal. We wanted to create additional revenue streams by leveraging SMS to engage our audience through relevant and targeted messaging. So at the time that we started this was about a 10-week case study we did where at the time we had a lot of text message SMS subscribers. We had acquired a lot of them through our big events like the MTV Video Music Awards is a big event we run in the US, and people can vote through text messaging on things like Artist of the Year or Video of the Year. And once they do that, we give them the opportunity to opt in to receive more information through texting from us. We had these big lists, but they were sort of not managed. We would message people when we thought there was something interesting. It wasn't very consistent. What we messaged was not always consistent, and we were seeing very high opt-out rates. We saw about a 10% opt-out rate every time we messaged the group. So the marketing managers who ran these lists, they started having the belief that if I don't message my list, then I can keep it really big. And it was kind of, my perspective was, well, if we're not messaging them, it's not providing any value. And they just became fearful that every time they did, they would lose a bunch of people. So we wanted to take a look at what was the right way to engage these users. So it's effective for us in terms of monetization, but it's valuable to the user. So one thing we did in the beginning was we just took a look at our audience. So we knew some things from marketing surveys and ad sales surveys. So this was particular to the brand MTV. We knew that it was a pretty high concentration of young adults, skewed slightly female. We knew that we had acquired many of these users, as I mentioned, through these big voting campaigns. So we knew that at some point they had expressed some interest in our brand and were probably watching one of our shows. So there's some intent there. We also, at the time, and this was early 2011, I'll show you how it's changed since, but we took a look at the device breakdown. And this is important to us because we don't want to just send them a text message. We want to then direct them to another platform where they can get more content. So a mobile website, maybe from a mobile website, send them to an app. So we needed to know what devices people were using, so we looked at our data. And at the time, Android was sort of new. iOS and iPhone was not as new, but still pretty new. RIM was around 10%, and then we had this big pool of other devices, which were uncategorizable. I'll show you quickly what that looks like today, just to show you how things change so quickly in mobile. So Android has exploded for us. iPhone has grown a little bit, and then some of the others have shrunk. So this changes, and this is one of the things that makes things really challenging for us and interesting. So steps for achieving our goals. So again, our goal was let's leverage this channel, which is SMS, to generate more revenue and engage our audience. So the first thing we wanted to do was define those revenue-generating monetization endpoints. So one of them is directly within the text message. So our salespeople, and we had partnered with other sales forces to inject text ads in the messages. So right away, there's revenue. Putting links to mobile websites, which are ad supported, a second revenue driver. Once we've got them on the mobile website, offering them some of our own applications. Another one where we can either sell premium applications or ad-supported applications, and then just offering other messaging products. The next thing we wanted to look at was what are the different pivots we want to examine to help us determine the right way to do this. So what's the best time of day to message somebody? What's the best day of week? How many days a week should we message them? What's the right length of the message? What's the right tone of that message? And what type of content do people respond the best to? Then we wanted to decide what data do we want to look at to help us determine if we're affecting all of those things in the middle column. So the two things we decided on were reducing the opt-out rates from the text message groups themselves and increasing click-through rates to our mobile sites, which is increasing the engagement with these monetizable endpoints. So then we'll get into the case study. So here's an example of what we did. So here's a message. This was sent early on in the trial. And if you see, we have a couple of messages here. Both of them include text ads. So one of them, MTV, see what Breaking Dawn's Robert Pattinson thinks about an image that was released. So sort of provocative message, doesn't give people a lot of information about what they're about to see, but enough where it sort of entices them to click through. And then a message about Snooki from Jersey Shore, if you know the show. She's a big lightning rod for criticism and all kinds of things, and there are lots of big fans. So we want these messages to be interesting. Once users click through, they're brought then to an optimized experience for their device. So they're getting more of what they've received in the text message. And again, we're able to monetize this by showing banner ads. So with one user and a couple of interactions, we've been able to serve 2 ads and generate revenue off of that. So this is what we wanted to do more of and do something better with. So again, which variables result in high click-through and low opt-out rate? So here's what we did. We ran a 10-week study, and the first thing we wanted to look at was what time of day is most effective at lowering opt-out rates and increasing click-through rates. So what we did is we took this big group, which, as I mentioned, had a pretty high opt-out rate, around 9 or 10%. We split it in half, and we sent the same message to Group A and Group B throughout that 2-week period, but we sent it at different times. So Group A would receive the message at 2 p.m., Group B would receive it at 8 p.m., and then the next day we would switch to different times, and constantly look at the data around opt-out rates for each group and then click-through rates for each group. So what we found over this 2-week period, and I would have loved to have done this for a longer period of time, but during that 2-week period we found that 6 p.m. for that group of users was the most effective time. Lowest opt-out rates. Click-through rates were similar in the evening time, but they were the highest at 6 p.m. So once we knew that, we took the groups and we mashed them back together and we ran a 4-week trial. And during the 4-week trial, we wanted to measure what days of the week were most effective and what was the frequency that was most effective. So we combined the groups and we sent everyone in the group the same message. But we varied the days of the week and the frequency. So in week 1, we sent Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In week 2, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and so on and so on. So we changed the frequency. 1 week, we sent a message every day. 1 week, we sent it 2 times. So again, I would have loved to have done this for more weeks, but we were able to collect some valuable data. And what we found was that people were more likely to click through during weekdays. And we had lots of theories about why that was. People are more engaged, people are maybe busier on the weekends, but we found that click-through was higher during weekdays. We also found that 3 messages per week, or 4 was really close, 3 or 4 were the most optimal number of messages to send per week. When we got down to 2, we saw higher opt-out rates and lower click-throughs, and if we went to more, we just saw lower click-throughs, but similar opt-out rates. So we settled on weekdays, we settled on Monday, Wednesday, Friday for our messages, okay? Just to sort of build up this behavior with the users. The next thing we tested was the length of the message. So if you know text messaging, you know you get 160 characters to play with. This has existed for a long time. We typically had used all 160, and our marketing editors had packed as much as they could into this message. We wanted to know if that was the right way to do it. So again, we split the groups up, and for 2 weeks, we sent Group A 120-character message, and Group B a 160-character message. Same content, just written slightly differently so that it can either be longer or shorter. And what we found was shorter messages were better. So this was, we sort of believed this would be the case, but we wanted some data to back it up with. And we wanted our marketing managers to feel like they knew exactly the right way to do this, and they weren't sort of making it up, and they needed guidelines. So once we agreed that 6 p.m. is the best time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 times a week on weekdays was the best days of the week in frequency. 120-character messages, or just shorter, more concise messages were better. Then we started examining the types of content that people respond to. So for this, we continued to keep the groups separate. And again, I said we're a TV company. Video is our main product. But we have other things that sort of stem off of that. So lots of photo-based content, lots of news-based content. So for this, we split the groups, and Group A would receive a message, check out photos from this episode of this show. And Group B would receive a message, check out video from this episode of this show. I thought video would be the higher click-through option, but we were surprised that photos were actually higher. And theories there were people are concerned about data connections, people may be in public places where maybe they don't want the audio to embarrass them, and our videos can totally embarrass people. So what we found was that photos were the most effective. So now we had all this information, and we put it together in sort of a guideline and a manual for our marketing managers, and we said that your most effective time is 6 p.m., 3 days a week, during weekdays. Make your messages shorter. Photos are great. And our marketing managers loved it. They were so thrilled to have some guidelines around this, and we had some data to back it up. So here's the data. So before we started this, we were measuring our click-through on our messages. So this is just mobile web views through the SMS referral. So people who clicked on the link and then viewed some pages on our mobile optimized site. So I call out this big spike because there's some things we can't control, like breaking news. If 2 artists get into a fight with each other at a concert, we can't control that. If one of our celebrities dies or has a baby or something good, we can't control all of that. The things we can control are some of these more longer-term things. So the spikes were due to, there was a breaking news story on that day. But what we saw was that we increased mobile web page views just from this referral channel by about 5 to 10%, which is significant for us. That's ad revenue for us. Then we looked at the 2 things we wanted to measure most were opt-out rates and click-through to mobile. So the red line is your opt-out rates. So it had been hovering for a long time around 9 or 10%. Once we implemented this program, we dropped it almost immediately. After a couple of weeks, we dropped it to about 2.5%. Our click-through rate, which had hovered around 1%, increased to about 2%. So not a huge lift there, but something that's important to us. The big winner here was we were keeping subscribers. So we were offering them something that was valuable to them, and we were doing it in a way where they sort of became conditioned to this behavior. They became used to getting messages on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 p.m., and they would click through and see what it was. Prior to that, we would send a message maybe on a Wednesday, maybe on a Thursday, maybe at 2 p.m., maybe at 8 p.m., and this repetitive behavior seemed to work. So it was successful. So the key takeaway here, and I definitely want to get into some other sort of guidelines and takeaways, is that SMS is an effective tool for optimizing engagement and revenue. So when I showed you all the arrows in the beginning, SMS is one of the first things we ever started doing, and we've never stopped. That's been an effective tool for us, and it still continues to be. It's something that you can push to the user, and there aren't too many of those things in mobile. You can do push notifications within apps, but users have a lot of control over those, and they have to have the app installed. SMS is a really effective way to get something to a user, but don't stop with just the text message. Have a destination to send them to. So some other takeaways, and I definitely want to hear from you guys, maybe talking later about how you think you can apply this to your businesses. So learn about your audience. So one of the slides I showed was demographic info. One of the things I didn't mention earlier, and Andy mentioned this in his presentation this morning, the story of Beth. I thought that was really interesting, and one of the things that I encourage my team to do is just go out and talk to people. So go find your users. whenever we're building a new product, so we're lucky enough to be located in New York City, and we're right in Times Square. So for better or worse, there's tons of people around. And what we'll often do, I'll send my team out when we're about to build a new product. I'll say, go out for 45 minutes, talk to 10 people, and ask them what they would do. How do they find new television shows? What do they tweet about, and why do they do it? Things that are related to our business, because you never know what you might find, and it's 45 minutes out of your day to find out some interesting things about your users. So talk to your users. Those individual stories sometimes can lead to really, really big findings that you wouldn't have thought of. So again, who's your audience? Where do they come from? I mentioned that many of those users had opted in because they voted on one of our award shows. So there's some intent. We know how we acquired them as users. Build on that. I said talk with them. Once you have started building, test, measure, and optimize regularly. So we continue to look at the data around opt-out and click-through that started with this case study, and we're constantly looking at whether or not it's still effective. Do we need to pivot a little bit? Do we need to change things? So continue to do that, and you can do it cheaply. You really just need somebody who's focused on it, and you need the data accessible. So specific to SMS, message regularly. Build up that behavior with your users. Once they get used to it, if I get a text message, I'm subscribed to a whole bunch of things. I'm subscribed to one from a news organization, and I get a text message maybe once a month. And I'm subscribed because I like to watch what other people are doing in the space. But if I were just a user, I may opt out because I may not know what that is. I don't remember what happened last month. So I may forget that I actually subscribed to this. So message them regularly. Continue to keep that behavior constant. I recommend 3 messages a week. You can try 4, but I recommend you also try out with your users what's most effective. Appeal to the masses, so be relevant to any user. One of the things we do, and we're a TV company again, so we often will send trivia questions in our text messages. You know, who won the fight between these 2 characters in this show, something like that. So a question that just about anybody can answer. You don't want to only ask questions of the super fan. So you know, who was wearing a blue dress in scene 7 of episode 3? The super fan will know that, but you want to appeal to the masses. You want everybody to feel smart and involved. Really important one, be viewable on any device. So a mobile optimized, we try not to just push information to them. We try to give them something that's valuable. Engage the user. So I mentioned before trivia questions. Open-ended questions are great for us, and I'm sure they can be great for other areas. So we've had tons of reality TV shows. Ocho Cinco and Tio are a couple of ex-football players who, for some reason, got reality TV shows. And one of the questions we asked was, who's better? So everybody can have an opinion on that, or most people can have an opinion on that. So ask these open-ended questions. When was the last time you blank? So when was the last time you bought a new shirt? When was the last time you had your oil changed? When was the last time? Things that can be relevant to your world and to your business. And not to be forgotten is allocate sufficient resources. This doesn't have to be a huge team. Just have somebody who is focused on this. So what we did was we only did this trial, and we've done this trial with some of our other brands since, but we only did it with folks who had one person who could focus on it. So this person knew the audience, knew the content, and was ready and willing to look at the data on a regular basis. So have that person. And you don't need to create a whole set of new information or new content or any new things that your business doesn't already do. You probably have existing content you can leverage. So use it. And with that, I will open it up to questions. And if you don't ask, I'll have questions for you guys because I want to see how you'll apply it.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. 2 quick questions.
Yes.
When you say people opted in, and you were saying that they might have voted in on a show or something,
Yep.
So they wouldn't actually say that they want to get messages, would they? Or I'm just wondering if you would look at that, because maybe you would have less of an opt-out if it's something that people really opted into. And the other question was, did you look at how many of the, is there any way to tell if the devices were smartphones or not? Because maybe also people couldn't go to the website, you know, if they didn't have a smartphone.
Yep, two great questions. So the first question was the way we were acquiring these users. So we tried it both ways. We tried the sneaky way, and we tried the more obvious way. So the sneakier way was in the US, there's a set of guidelines that you have to follow based on carrier rules that say you have to tell a user that they're opting into something. So you can do it in your TV-based call to action for folks that are doing it on TV. So what we did in one case was we ran a promo on TV that said, vote now for Artist of the Year and get opted in to receive more information from MTV. So we put that information and we set it in the voiceover. It's a little sneaky, but you get way more opt-ins through that. It's a great point, though. You do get higher opt-out rates. We also tried the method of vote now for Artist of the Year. Once you set your vote, you would then get a message, thanks for your vote, reply why to now be opted in to receive more from MTV. Lower opt-in rates, but also lower opt-out rates later. So I would say do what's best for your business. We have tried both. We tend to go for the volume and try to optimize those users once they're in, but it's, you know, you can do it a couple of different ways. The other question was, did we look at devices people were using? So we cannot tell what device somebody has from their text message, but we can once they get to the mobile site. So we did look at click-through, and I'm sure there was a percentage of click-through that was lost because devices maybe didn't have a data plan or had a device that maybe didn't have a powerful enough browser. So I'm sure we lost some of those, but we weren't really able to quantify it. What we could do was quantify the number of users once they got to our mobile site. There we can detect everything about their device and all their capabilities. So we helped that inform our decisions about what products we built on the site. So did we offer video? Did we offer links to iTunes to download our app? Did we offer links to Android? So once they got to that step, we did a lot of optimization.
So Joe, I'll throw one thing that builds on that point, because you know, back when I used to work at Microsoft, it was just when we were going through this ROI revolution and everything was becoming analytics, what's the return on that? And I guess you could say that in our market over the last two and a half years, that's been taking more and more hold. Mm-hmm. So the link that you made between seeing a result and optimizing very quickly is a really important one. I think it might be useful for you to expand on that, because you know, that's probably an area of interest and opportunity for folks as they're starting to get more familiar with all these different kinds of data.
Right.
How do you parse? Which ones do you pick? How do you build a system that allows you to react very quickly?
Sure. So I'll talk about the sources of the data for this case study. So on the SMS side, we work with a third-party vendor who aggregates all of our messages and sends them through a pipeline. We had data from them that we then had to merge with our analytics data on our mobile website. We work with Omniture, which is owned by Adobe, to power all of that. So we were able to sort of just, based on math, not based on a user, figure out click-through rates, so total minus number of messages. So we were able to do it that way. But you know, I think the most important thing we did in this case study was before we even got started, we defined what the important data points were going to be. And that was opt-out rate and click-through. And I think once you do that, then you can decide where you're going to find that data from, and then you have the opportunity to just look at it regularly and optimize based on it. So that would be my #1 recommendation. When you start looking at data, just define what's important first. And even if it's the wrong thing, you'll figure that out pretty quickly.